as a person of Haitian descent, as an African American appearing body, those ancestors and my elders, they didn't migrate here for me to not be dope. I seek to be with some magnificent collaborators who do it with me through performance, curation, investment, and commitment to change. My name is Marc Bamuthi Joseph. I make culture.
Welcome. Welcome, fellow culture makers. Welcome at the State of the World. The upcoming hour, we are going to reflect on the role of art in our changing world with a very special guest all the way from the United States of America. I prepared some questions, of course, but I also leave plenty of room for you, the audience, for your questions, for maybe some reflections even. Maybe we can make this a cultural brainstorm because the director of the het Nederlands Theater Festival, he keeps on saying, we are in different boats, but we're in the same storm. So that's what we are going to talk about. My name is Rogaya Sek. I'm program editor here at the Balie. And today I have the honor to welcome Marc Bamuthi Joseph. So give him a warm welcome. Welcome. He's a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. He's a spoken word artist, a performer, a librettist, and much more. And he's also collaborated with major orchestras and opera houses. Welcome. How are you doing?
Yeah, microphone.
I think you're used to it.
Yes, yes. Hey, everybody. Hi, it's good to see y'all, and what an honor to be here in your gorgeous country.
Thanks.
Y'all laugh, but y'all laugh, but I'm from Queens, New York, and it is truly one of the most beautiful places in the world. You may take it for granted, but I don't. So thanks for having me here and not kicking me out as soon as I got here.
Yeah, we already saw you're kind of a cultural jack of all trades, but unfortunately maybe a lot of people here know you because you were the artistic director of social impact of the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. That got fired in March this year under the, and I'm only going to say his name one time.
La 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 la.
Trump administration. And you made a video that went viral. So maybe dive into that time by take a look at the video. Let's take a look.
Well, I am sitting in my office at the Kennedy Center one last time. It's funny. I'm taking things down like this red, black, and green American flag and this extraordinary piece of artwork that my man Greg made that honors Stevie Wonder, and this poster from BAM and a commemorative album that was organized by Swiss Beats. Basically, I'm taking down everything black in my office, just as the new leadership of the Kennedy Center is doing its best to disavow much of the literal color that has made this place special. I'm grieving and angry and also ready to be rid of the moral injury that has come with being in this place. It's hard to say goodbye, but it isn't hard to say goodbye to an oppressive situation. So may liberation be my liturgy. I'm proud of what we made here. We will always have an impact.
Yeah, what happened that day?
I hadn't watched that, and I hadn't seen that.
How is it for you to watch it?
Emotional. We culture makers are prompted by the heart. There's a woman named Bell Hooks, an author whose work I'm engaging with over and over again. She has this book called All About Love. And one of my favorite knowings from the book is this idea that the heart is a seat of learning. That as we are intellectually brilliant in aggregate in this room, there is an emotional intelligence which is just as resonant. And the thing is that there are very few opportunities to hold up a true mirror to our emotional journeys. And so that was a coordinate in time in my emotional pathway that I hadn't revisited. It's a little like when you open up your diary or you open up your journal or you see a photograph of yourself from 15 years ago or 20 years ago and you remember who you were and what you were listening to. These are the things that make us human. And so to watch that is like to revisit my humanity, a part of myself that I hold dear, but isn't always awake in my mind's eye.
And what do you feel when seeing that video?
It's a revisitation of the sadness, but there's also, may liberation be my liturgy? Like, for real. Yeah.
Real storytelling.
Yeah, let's
also a
let's
piece
do
of
that.
art, that video.
Lightweight. But yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. I was privileged enough to spend some time with you earlier and to some really beautiful people earlier. We were talking about focused cultural strategy. And the people that are in this room, if you are moved to be here today, it's because, well, let me not presume to know why the fuck y'all are here. Y'all showed up. But if I were to make an assumption, I would think that we are gathered here today because we believe. We are curious, but we seek to believe in the cultural horizon. And the work that we were doing at the Kennedy Center was very much about explicit and intense belief in the idea of a transformative future. I used to think that the future is inevitable. Maybe the way some people used to think that democracy is inevitable. Or maybe for anyone who's been in love, you might think, oh yeah, love is inevitable. But for anyone who's been in love or who has been a participant in democracy, but particularly for those of us who have felt something for someone else, you know that it takes work. And so the work has to be choreographed in a way when we're talking about the cultural horizon. That the prevalent tactic, I think, used to be identify gorgeous art and make it as accessible to as many people as possible. I think what the times have taught us, and this predates Voldemort, and I'm going to call him the times have taught us that while presenting the world's best art and making it as accessible to as many people as possible is an excellent tactic, it is not quite a strategy. A strategy has a specific, in our case, a specific social vision in mind. And so the thought for a long time at the Kennedy Center through Social Impact was to plan for the future by specifically investing in people who might author a transformative cultural horizon that was as expansive and as equitable as possible. And so being let go from the Kennedy Center, being among the first to be let go of the Kennedy Center, was an explicit declaration that an expanded cultural horizon was not in the agenda.
Yeah, but before we go to maybe the future, in the video you stated that you were ready to be rid of the moral injury that has come with him being in this place.
Yeah.
So it was an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
In what way? Can you tell us how it was to work in the institution and how things changed?
Okay, yes. Has anybody here ever been to the theater? Okay, good. A lot of people. Okay, cool. Has anybody here ever made theater? Okay, amazing. You know how when you make theater, everybody is working to make theater? That's not what was happening at the Kennedy Center. And it was the first time, and it must be said, that the person that was appointed to run the Kennedy Center, which is the national cultural center of the United States, the person that was appointed to run the Kennedy Center knows nothing about art. And further, the job that this person held before being the director of the National Cultural Center was, he was the interim director of national intelligence.
Okay.
And then the ambassador to Germany, but his most prominent role was to be the biggest spy in the United States apparatus as the director of national intelligence, and then was appointed to be the director of the Kennedy Center. So there are a bunch of things that we can say about that. But
how long did you work together with him?
Lord knows. I never. There's a story about why he and I never met. My ancestors saved me. The beer here is great, so maybe at some point we all go out for a beer and I'll tell you the story about how my ancestors saved me. But the timeline went like this. In the beginning of February of this year, there was an article that came out in a magazine, and in the article, Voldemort said he was going to take over the Kennedy Center. The President of the United States appoints the board of directors of the Kennedy Center. So even though this man was saying this fairly outlandish thing, I guess, or we guess, that maybe there was some validity to the claim. But the White House never directly contacted the people at the Kennedy Center. They just contacted the press first, and social media first, which is kind of how governance is being done. So that happened on a Friday. On a Saturday, the chair of the board of directors was removed, which was weird. On Monday, the guy that's now running the thing came in to walk around the place. It was the first time he'd ever been there.
That was the The guy who worked in Germany. And
Exactly. Whatever Voldemort's cat is named, that's him. So that guy.
The mentor.
The Dementor. Voldemort and his Dementor. Amazing. For those of y'all who are now boycotting J.K. Rowling, you're missing it, but it's awesome what's happening here. So the Dementor came on Monday, and on Tuesday, there was an emergency board meeting that was called, and at that meeting, every single person that President Biden had appointed to the board was let go. A whole new slate of directors was appointed. One of those people was Voldemort, and that person then was nominated to be the chair of the board. That happened on Tuesday. 5 minutes after that meeting, the president, the person who hired me, Deborah Rutter, was fired. All this happened in the beginning of February, and I wasn't fired until the end of March. So for 2 months, all of us just worked in service of making culture, while the people in charge worked in service to defang artists of their cultural right. In the interim, artists like Lin-Manuel Miranda, artists like Issa Rae, artists like Renee Fleming, all these people decided that they could no longer have an association with the center. But when I speak of moral injury, I'm speaking of the phenomenon of working in service of a thing while the value system in that environment and in that landscape is directly opposed to what you were trying to make.
Were there also people who were leaving? Like cultural makers, people who...
Only one person left. Mm-hmm. All of us were in shock. You know, generally there's a process. Mm-hmm. You know, the president says, I'm going to leave in 6 months. Or the chair of the board says, I'm going to leave in a year. And then it takes, as many of you who have run cultural institutions know, it takes 3 months to 2 years sometimes to find a new person. And generally, the person that gets hired knows what the fuck they're doing. So all of us were like, what do we do? And we all had a responsibility to artists. We all wondered out loud and through our actions, how do we make this as safe a place as possible for people to continue to do their art? And maybe because we are optimists and because we lead with the artist's heart, maybe we thought if we stick around, we can make this place, we can save this place. I think once me and my team were let go, it became clear that the place probably wasn't going to be worth saving.
And why do you think they started with or it wasn't the start, but why specifically the social impact team?
Mm-hmm. Because the social impact team, some people curate dance, and some people curate theater, some people curate music. I curate justice through the lens of art and community. And there's this word that people use, woke. I hate that word.
I think a lot of people hate it.
It is so lazy. It is so lazy. To say, I believe in your right to exist. And I believe in your right to love whoever it is that you're going to love. I believe in you enough to also believe in your children.
Is that a new word or?
That is a the way that woke takes all those feelings and binds them inside of a derogatory box meant to be condemned and belittled is an oversimplification and intellectually lazy way of approaching what could be constructive conversations about equity, which, not for nothing, equity is the goal of the Constitution of the United States of America. Not to say that equity is the outcome of the Constitution of the United States of America, but equity, as it is authored inside of our Constitution, is a named aspiration. And my belief is that according to the United States Constitution, you actually cannot be citizen if you cannot be a citizen if you don't have access to inspiration. In order to be enshrined as a citizen in any country, you have to have access to hope, because that is actually how a country sustains itself. So within the cultural environment of the Kennedy Center, my job was to invest in people that shared this vision of a transformative future by expanding the cultural radius to as many people as possible. And that was deemed woke and therefore immediately had to be shut down.
What kind of ideology do you think is behind that?
I often say that some people think of art as a bridge. That when folks don't agree, art is the bridge that is the road between opposing sides. And I do not believe that.
What do you believe?
I believe that art is a battery. That instead of building a bridge where I'm over here alive and you want to kill me over here and I'm going to make art where we meet in the middle, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make my art over here where I'm alive. And you can come over here where we both can be free. So the ideology that would oppose that vision of art and culture is the ideology that I think is in practice under this particular administration.
So, and when we go back to that moment in March where you got fired, I'm sorry that I have to take you back, but
It's all good.
what happened?
It was pretty simple. Anybody ever been fired before? I mean, you know, it's okay. It was, I mean, not that it was like fun, but we saw it coming, which he steps forward. When you see it coming, pay attention. When you see it coming, behave like it's coming. For anyone that's ever been on a beach and you see a wave approaching, you don't think, oh, that wave is going to stop before it hits me. You make steps. And so one of the things that we did was we started to make steps right away as soon as the person came in office. And honestly, I started making steps in my personal life about a year before, which, again, great beer, second round. We started to speak to people immediately about the end of the calendar year, the end of the program year, and all the different investments that we were making. And I talk about
Summer?
This is
End of the program year?
So we are on the federal fiscal calendar. So I was fired in March. The hostile takeover happened in February, and we had plans really for the next 2 years, but we specifically had programmatic plans that we had to execute through September 30th. So the end of this month actually is still. Now, in the meantime, there were artists, particularly artists from the trans community, that immediately said, we cannot come. Not because there was any sort of protest, but because they felt unsafe. When the artists begin to feel unsafe, protect them. And that became the job.
And protecting means?
Protecting means financial and physical security. It meant finding alternative places for them to do their work in residency. It meant sometimes finding their contracts and executing their contracts so that they were immediately paid rather than being paid 50% out. Because one of the great advantages of having people who are in charge who don't know what they're doing is you just... You know, so we had, I can say this now because like one of the things that we had planned was a gathering of Black composers and librettists that we were hosting in Montgomery, Alabama. Montgomery, Alabama is very, very important in the history of the United States, particularly in freedom struggles. And we were hosting a gathering of Black composers and librettists from all over the country that we'd invested in over the last 3 years. This was going to cost us about $75,000 to do. But they didn't know it. So we just like fast forwarded all the contracts and booked all the hotels and da-da-da. And the gathering actually took place a week after I got fired. So we're all just sitting there, you know, like...
You're also there at the...
Oh, yeah, I went. You know, I went. I was like, vodka for everybody. Charge it to Voldemort. And that's what we did.
So before I'm going to take the first look at the audience, one more question. In a performance that you had after you got fired, you said, choose mercy, engage your transgressor.
Oh, yeah.
Say, I mean this pain with you.
Yes.
Is that, yeah, how did you manage? Because it was like maybe a few days after you got fired.
Yes. So I'm so grateful that these photos are coming up. So I'm a performer. I'm a writer and a performer. I'm here. This photo was taken with the Los Angeles Philharmonic. That is the great Gustavo Dudamel, who is conducting a piece with the LA Philharmonic that I made with the composer Carlos Simon called Good News. All the work that I'm doing right now is really focused on the relationship between emotional intelligence and the sustainability of democracy. So this is a piece called Good News that is a piece for orchestra and symphony, and that's focused, you know, again on this idea of maybe a spiritual connection to community. I talked about the work, I talked about bell hooks a little bit, and I'm making a work called Tomorrow Love. And Tomorrow Love emphasizes or wonders out loud about the relationship between love and manhood and love and masculinity. And the underlying thought is that one of the reasons why we're in this mess is because we do not teach love to men. There's a third work that I'm making called Remembering Empathy, and that too is a work for symphony and orchestra, and that is a piece that thinks about memory, folklore, truth, history, facts, and erasure, and wonders out loud about whether empathy itself is the actual kind of sustaining element beyond the fear that we're all experiencing, that there is the thing that actually plagues us is apathy. And inspiration is the tool that turns apathy into empathy. So the work that you just cited is a work called the Forgiveness Suite. So these are the things: empathy, love, forgiveness, and their role in sustainable democratic ideals and structures. Forgiveness is part of the infrastructure of democratic possibility.
And could you really feel that when you were standing there a few days after you got fired? I leave this pain with you.
Yeah. Forgiveness requires a releasing of other people's stuff. And the thing that I imagine is present in this room is an awareness that we are actually the moral global majority. My belief, and maybe I'm just like a hopeless optimist, but my belief is that there are more people that want more people to live than not. My belief is that one's freedom isn't predicated on the oppression of someone else, that freedom is not a binary dynamic, that freedom is like sunlight. We all can get some. And within that understanding, I do not have to take on the pain of the very, very, very small man who has the largest job in the world. It sucks for all of us that the filter of our daily lives is the experience of probably the most traumatized, unloved person that any of us have ever encountered, who in turn has released his trauma into violence in his personal life and now at a global scale. But what we were saying earlier is that with all that heaviness, the responsibility of the people in this room is to cultivate light. Our job is to rise above it all. And also to create the landscape where others might be intentionally inspired to lift above as well. So I can't do my work if I'm harboring his pain. And I'm not going to let his pain be my weight. So would I rather like punch Voldemort in the face? Is it more, will I forget? Can I forgive? And in fact, can our democracy survive if we don't learn how to forgive? That is an ongoing question, but if we are to create the infrastructure for a post-fear economy and a post-fear democracy, forgiveness is a muscle we're all going to have to flex.
Thank you. So, are there questions from the audience? And maybe it's also nice to introduce yourself shortly, which institution or cultural background, like, what kind of art you make.
Okay. Nan van Houten, background in the performing arts, contemporary performing arts. My question is, I thank you a lot for this inspiring talk, by the way. My question is, I understand your notion of empathy with the traumatized Voldemort. My problem is all those people that are less traumatized, that are steering this puppet,
Yes.
and how to battle those.
Yeah. That is a great question. Get your cousin. Get your cousins. Like, yeah, you feel me? Yeah, that is an excellent point. Well, again, this is where we come in. We as makers of art, we as holders and stewards of cultural institutions. The battle that we lost first was the battle for narrative justice. We were talking a little bit earlier about two timelines. And where we started was, before you have policy, you have culture. Culture precedes policy. And within those two, within that understanding, there have been, and again, I'm only speaking from a very narrow perspective of someone who grew up in the United States of America. So within that country, there are at least two parallel timelines. One timeline that is essentially a coalition of all the people that were not thought about during the drafting of the Constitution of the United States. Those people and their allies. And then there's the second timeline, which it works in service and in protection of heterosexism, white supremacy, patriarchy, like all our favorites. And for me, in my life, there is that first cultural timeline, the more kind of culturally expansive timeline, peaked in a way, or spiked in a way, with the election of Barack Obama. Not because he's like the greatest politician, but because what he represented in a distilled form, what that family was, the fluidity of cultural language represented, I think, a spike in that kind of moral timeline. At which point, the second timeline, the one that works in service of all these like great isms that are just have a more narrow understanding of what power and power, the influence of power, that went into overdrive and brought us to this place.
What kind of isms?
Racism, sexism, homophobia, fatphobia, transphobia. So because culture precedes policy, and because cultural works on narrative, generally speaking, the narrative around who gets to have justice somehow has eroded and has gotten to the place in the United States, and perhaps this is familiar to, for folks who live here as well, there is a narrowing of focus and of the idea, the story of who gets to have justice. So these puppets that you're describing, the people that are just kind of going along, are moving according to a very narrow cultural focus predicated on this idea that justice is only due to very few people. And the kind of corollary idea is that not only is justice only afforded to a few, but justice actually is devalued if everyone has it.
What's the role of the art to...
I'm so glad you asked that question, okay? Because who authors the public imagination? Who are the authors of the cultural horizon and the public imagination?
Artists?
So when we siphon the power from artists to properly author possibility, we diminish what is possible. When I'm walking around, or maybe when you're on your bicycle, are you listening to like speeches? Maybe you are, because some of y'all are nerds and y'all are listening to political speeches. But most of us, podcasts and speeches aside, many of us are listening to music. When we make love, you're not listening to your podcast. When you want, well, maybe some of y'all are, because that's your thing.
We don't judge.
I don't judge. But my point is,
But how come? Sorry.
Yes.
Point is,
just very quickly.
how come you?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
How come we lost it? How come we as artists lost the battle of narratives? If that's
because
actually our job.
Yeah, because fear is easier. I think is the short answer. Fear is easier than growth. So the gig now becomes make growth sexy again.
Another question.
Hi, my name is Luki, and I'm here with my school. We are and my study colleagues. And we study theater design. And my question is, if we makers and storytellers are being more oppressed, how would we practically keep our humanity? And do you have any practical tips?
Practical tips for keeping our humanity? Easy. Okay. Tulips don't smell. So I can't say stop and smell the tulips. But color. You're a designer, or you are part of theater design. That is your kind of area of study.
I would say I'm becoming a designer.
Okay, you're becoming a designer. Very humble of you. I appreciate your humility and grace. Someone has to design the future. As a matter of fact, the future that we're all living in has been designed for us in many ways. But the outer edge of that design is authored by creative intelligence. And we were saying earlier, while many of us think of AI as artificial intelligence, I think of AI as artistic intelligence. And one of our problems, I think, is we have not successfully deployed artistic intelligence as part of our leadership practices. I don't know how corporate structures work here, but in the nonprofit world in the United States of America, there are lawyers and technologists, there are rich people on the boards of all the theaters. There are no artists that are on the board of Meta. Like, there's no choreographer that's on the board of Google. So we don't have art as part of our leadership apparatus or our understanding of how leadership gets constructed. That has to be designed for us. So my advice around how you hold your humanity is to remember color, is to cherish it, is to not take love for granted, to honor your memory, to honor your pain, to honor those that have come before you, to imagine 7 generations after you, to honor color, to remember.
Is that practical enough? And meditate on that. Are there more questions from the audience? Yeah.
My name is Annelies. I'm the business director of Tuki Delphin, a performing arts collective.
God bless you. Business directors. Okay, sits up.
We are going to the States in a few weeks to perform at a few places. And we, you know, when we started this, obviously we've been talking for 2 years, it feels very different going there now in September than it was when we signed the contract like a year ago. So first of all, we have to talk to our friends who say, are you going to the States? I would never go, you shouldn't go. People tell us, stay here. So that's one thing I would, if you have like a great response, that would be brilliant. And the second one is, when we're there, which will be like in about 3 weeks, we would love to do something, like say something, wear something that kind of gives a little message. But we're also scared that we're going to be expelled from the country and never able to go back to the States again. So
You mean kind of a provocative act or something?
something like, it could be really small, but we would, it feels that maybe we should do a little something. But yeah, we're also scared that we will never get a visa again, which we will reapply next year probably. So we're in between. Yeah, it's tough, but we're looking forward. But it's also at the same time, it's tough.
May I ask what cities you're going to be in?
We're going to be Dartmouth, New Hampshire. We're going to be Governor's Island, New York. And we're going to be in Bentonville in Arkansas.
Okay, great. Great. Okay. All right. So, scared. Yep, me too. So, we talked about forgiveness and the muscle to forgive. I know you're the business director. The accountants are allowed to be scared. The artists are also allowed to be scared, but are not permitted to act with fear. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the thing about being an artist is it's your job to inspire other people for a living. Like, you might think as an artist that your job is to like make your art. And that is true. But in the broader economic ecology, there are people who are police officers. There are people who are construction workers. There are people that are curators. Each of these people have a specific role in our creative economy. Creative, or in our overall economy, creative labor, the role of creative labor is to inspire. So, on behalf of the global moral majority, go ahead and show up. Now, the small act, your being there is an act. The grand gesture, the symbolic gesture, is a little trickier. I will confess to you that when I leave here and I come back to the United States, I am nervous because, well, I'm nervous. And I also am emboldened. You know, I have relationships, I have a mom, I have kids. I'm not trying to like martyr myself.
Are there also things you don't do because you're scared?
Not yet.
And what do you see around you? Other artists?
I see artists, I see artists like continuing to just like do the thing. I see arts organizations and I see cultural philanthropists not doing the thing. So we who are stewards of cultural institutions really have to ask ourselves, like, what is my gig? Is the gig to preserve this building for as long as possible?
Do you have an example of how the institutions are not doing the thing?
I will not talk about institutions because it gets super personal, but I'll talk about philanthropists. Mm-hmm. That too is personal because money matters. But a common experiencing that I think many of us are having, and this is why I think lots of institutions have some trepidation or have some hesitation. Cultural philanthropists used to be able to say, you're a great artist, here's $5, go make art. Now cultural philanthropists are like, if I give this artist $5 and they say something wild, then the administration will track that $5 back to me and I'm going to end up being held accountable for something. So rather than doing that, I'm going to direct the resources elsewhere. Or formerly cultural philanthropists will take what I think they believe is a brave position and say, I'm going to work in direct opposition to what this administration is doing, and I'm going to fund a candidate or some kind of think tank or some kind of something that feels like it's in direct opposition to the direction of the current administration.
I hope it was the other way around, that because of the difficulty that the art world is having, maybe people with money would...
You would think, but that's not what's going on. Instead, what's happening is people say, how is culture going to stop Voldemort's administration? How is culture supposed to stop Voldemort? But kind of going back to this idea of culture preceding policy, Voldemort has currently won culture. The only way, it is not going to be weapons. The only way to stop what is happening is through culture. We have temporarily lost the battle of the culture war. And because culture precedes policy, we are in a legislative and policy-driven place that reflects that. So the thing that I would advise, and I know that there's a different kind of financial and system at play here, but the thing that I would advise, especially to people working in the United States, is to reframe philanthropy instead of having conversations about funding a dance company. I think we're having conversations about the stability of democratic ideals. That to invest in an equitable future means first investing in our cultural institutions. And I think as stewards of cultural institutions, we have to be very visible, which is scary. But I think we have to be visible and forthright about naming that not only do we believe in art and we believe in artists, but we believe in an expanded cultural horizon.
Thanks. Last question, and I also have one more question after that. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Inge Joris from Brussels, work for theater there in Brussels. And we are also trying to work around opposition towards what is happening already also in Europe. So is there, my question, I liked very much what you said, like I'm not going to take the weight of Trump. No, I'm not going to take his weight. We need to rise above it. Is there like people, are they getting organized in the States and also in the cultural sector to oppose to what is happening? We don't hear so much about it here.
Yeah, you don't hear so much, huh?
Thank you.
It's true. It's true. First of all, shout out to you, Rochaya, for like being the host, asking the questions, being the curator, moving the mic, like doing every single thing just an extraordinary and dynamic individual. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Doing it all. You know, as to the question, the poet Lil Wayne says, real G's move in silence like lasagna. So, isn't there always a reason why resistance happens in the night? And correspondingly, even though it happened right in front of our eyes, it seems like the takeover of the public imagination has happened in the shadows. That there is at once a very stark set of actions, a stark and discernible set of actions that you can kind of track that has gotten us to this place that uses this kind of collection of words, this compendium of words that somehow made it so that it all happened without us really noticing. Like the passing of day, like a cloud in front of the sun. And maybe like a cloud in front of the sun, we thought that it would just keep going, but it has stayed. That, I think, is a more sinister reading and an appropriately sinister reading of the cultural takeover that has taken place. But there's, similarly, I think that there is, within our cultural framework, a dark side of the moon. And on that dark side of the moon, that is really where the resistance is happening.
In what way?
Humans make. Like, we make chairs, we make couches, we make tables, we make bottles, we make. Destruction is unsustainable. How many things do you break? How many wills? How many spirits? How many bodies do you break and expect to live? Expect to stand? What are we going to do when there's nothing left to eat but money and regret? What then? So, to resist is to stand in opposition to this unsustainable force of destruction. To resist is to make. And those of us in this room and the people that love us and the people that we love, we create, and that is resistance. And the hard thing, or one of the many hard things, is that it is actually not a snap of the fingers. One of the hardest things for all of us to like really take in, because it forces us to consider our humanity and our mortality, is that the thing that we are aiming for, we actually may not see. Yeah, we may not actually see. But if we don't help to create the conditions for it to come to fruition, then what? So I think that to find a young artist and to support a young artist, is 50 young?
Yes.
Okay, good. But particularly to support a young artist is the most revolutionary thing that any one of us can do right now. And by young, I mean, Scorpios born in 1975, young.
Well, I know it's 5 o'clock, but I think we need to know, how is the Kennedy Center doing?
Well, I stopped following the Kennedy Center on Instagram, so I don't know. But
You told us about the financial, that they have a lot of money, but not so many people in the audience, right?
Yeah. So the Congress of the United States appropriates funds to all, and the reason why the Kennedy Center, the reason why any of this was able to happen is because the Kennedy Center is a living memorial to the 35th President of the United States, John F. Kennedy. Great guy. Well, maybe. But definitely, if nothing else, John F. Kennedy was well, I don't know if he was a great writer, but he had a great ghostwriter at the very least. And one of the things that he talked about was aspiring to an America that had no fear of grace or beauty. I love that. The Kennedy Center is a federal memorial, so it used to get about $40 million a year from Congress just to preserve the memorial. That kept the lights on, the carpets got, security, all the stuff. And then the rest of the money came from philanthropy and from ticket sales. So under this administration, instead of $40 million, the Kennedy Center now gets $250 million. Which is the entire budget of the Kennedy Center, which means nobody has to come. Which is great because no one is coming. Now, that should alarm us all. Not that we're not already alarmed, but it should alarm us all because, as we were saying earlier at lunch, what this means is that when alternative points of view from around the world come to visit the Kennedy Center, the house is only 15% full. That 85% of the seats in the house are empty because no one is going. So the Kennedy Center has become, and maybe this is all of our fear. For our theaters actually don't mean much if people aren't in the seats. So you could be financially flush. The subtext then, or the other question then, is what is theater if there's no one to witness it? The witnesses are the purveyors of the culture. The outcome of the playwright's work isn't the play. The outcome is the culture that is born when the audiences leave. The purpose of this moment in time wasn't for me to speak. The purpose of this moment in time was for you to be here and for you to do whatever it is you're going to do with the time that we had together. If all of you leave and operate in a way that doesn't suggest any of this happened, then what was the point? So I can't really speak to either the financial wherewithal or the kind of, the audience infrastructure at that place. I would just say, let's all of us remember that the job isn't to make shows, the job is to make culture. And let's do that.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for lighting our fire here.
Let's go, let's go.
Fire.
Shout out to Tobias, I see you. Thank you, brother.
And thank you for being here. Yeah.
Cool.
And thank you for flying all the way from over the Atlantic Ocean to give us a pep talk.
Let's go, guys. Let's go. Let's do it.
Marc Bamuthi Joseph.